Welcome to Case Management and Documentation, Addiction Studies. Hi, everyone. My name is Shar, and I'm going to be discussing with you this week's textbook readings, Chapter 6, Attitudes and Boundaries. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The feelings that we have towards others can be described as attitudes. Attitudes heavily impact the type of outcomes in our relationships. When we have a positive perspective, it yields optimism, encouragement, and collaborative attitudes towards our relationships. As human service professionals, our attitudes and guidelines assist us in productive relationships with our clients. But this doesn't go without us exploring and evaluating our own attitudes and boundaries, as those can influence a client's self-determination and success. Our attitudes aren't limited to impacting our clients. Our attitudes actually impact all of our relationships as they establish communication and rapport. Our feelings are actually communicated through various avenues, whether it is something that we have said, our tone of voice, our body language, or even our actions. Our attitudes cannot be hidden. This is why it's really important for human service workers to have supportive and positive attitudes. But before a human service worker can help others, they have to help themselves. You know how when we get on a plane, the flight attendants always let you know to secure your own mask before you actually secure another person's mask. This is because if you don't secure your own mask, you're unable to effectively assist another person. The same goes for human service workers. Human service workers must become self-aware of their own fears, sensitivities, and errors of judgment before they can effectively assist someone. This includes providing grace or forgiveness for past or future mistakes. Affording yourself forgiveness enhances the ability to be empathetic towards others. When we forgive ourselves, it allows us to be human and recognize our own struggles in life. It promotes a tolerance in assisting others that have similar or even different struggles that they may be going through. Once we are able to secure our own human experience, we can then begin to assist others in doing the same. This starts with us having helpful attitudes. Let's talk about basic helping attitudes. Regardless of a worker's training or formal education, workers who are caring and committed effectively assist in the change and improvement of their clients' circumstances and emotional health. Let's stop and reflect on the support that you may have received in the past that has assisted you in your life, no matter how minor or major it may be. Think about the person or individuals that assisted you. Think about their attitudes towards you. Hopefully, some of these common principles or attitudes that you can identify in them are warmth, genuineness, and empathy. These three basic helping attitudes are essential when working in human services. They ensure that a positive dynamic between the client and professional is developed and maintained throughout all interactions. Warmth. The individual that you thought of earlier that assisted you in a past circumstance. Would you say that that person was kind, maybe enthusiastic, a safe place, or that they had great listening skills? If so, then that person can be described as having a warm attitude. In human service, a warm attitude is characterized as being friendly, non-judgmental, and receptive. This means that the worker demonstrates interest through their body language, actively listening, and the actions they take. They respect their client's decisions and recognize their autonomy and their own roles in shaping their own lives. They assist in facilitating change, acknowledging and responding to supportive confrontation, and make it a safe space for clients to share and explore various perspectives, including those that may differ from their own.
Genuineness. A genuine attitude is rooted in honesty, truthfulness, and sincerity in how one lives their lives as well as how they interact with others. That type of authenticity is crucial in helping relationships. There's a piece of advice that I give to newly hired colleagues when they're first dealing with clients, and that is to be yourself. There's no better person you can be than you, and when you can't be yourself, then be Beyonce. But no, seriously, no one likes a phony, no one likes a fake. And typically, we can smell when someone is being fake with us. Being disingenuous or inauthentic can come off as insulting, untrustworthy, and at worst, depending on the field of human services, unethical. Adopting false personas or failing to correct inaccurate assumptions can also have these same negative effects. For example, a client may overhear you speaking about a credential or a certification that your colleague possesses. They will assume that you have the same experience or expertise. It will lead them to asking you for your professional opinion. You should be truthful and open with the client. Inform them that that is not your expertise. Remember, it's okay to not know something, and it's also okay to admit that you do not know. Not informing the client can lead to confusion, mistrust, and foreshadow any of the other helping attitudes. Or let's take, for example, you spoke with the client and you forgot what the client stated to you, or you lost paperwork that they have provided. Be honest. Apologize. These type of actions will assist with building trust and credibility, demonstrating that you are indeed human. And being human means that you're capable of genuine communication. The third and last helping attitude that we're going to discuss is empathy. Now, empathy by definition is the ability to share and understand the feelings of another person. Empathy goes beyond sympathy or the feeling of sorrowness for another person's misfortunes. Both of these emotions can be present at the same time. However, sympathy conveys the message to our clients of worry or helplessness in their situations, while empathy is a clinical strategy that we use to assist in supporting our clients. That strategy involves much more than understanding. Let's take a look at this word cloud because empathy can involve many of the displayed actions on it, such as emotions, connections, compassion, authenticity. Nonetheless, let's take a little bit of a deep dive into being present, listening, hearing, communication, insight, and awareness. Now, imagine you're telling someone a story, but they aren't really listening to you. Maybe they're preoccupied by another task or even another thought. Would you feel heard by this person? Would they be able to understand the point of the story and provide you insight? Odds are not at all. Being present and listening and hearing in the moment helps to assist human service workers with adjusting and following the client's communication and unfolding experiences. This brings insights to issues, solutions that may or may not have been known. These actions help us to convey the message to our clients that we understand and we are aware of their situations. We can do this through dialogue, which includes words, body languages, and tone. It demonstrates authentic empathy. However, in human services, empathy also links to three other components, which is safety, compassion, and boundaries. Empathy and safety. Human service workers must create a safe space for clients to be open, According to Stephen Covey, a former counselor and author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we should seek first to understand and then to be understood. This habit is essentially empathetic listening. When we listen empathetically, we listen to understand. This provides time and permission to the client to express themselves genuinely. Once the client feels understood, they feel safe enough to explore their problems and solutions with the case manager. Empathetic engagement, on the other hand, which is composed of active listening, asking questions, and acknowledging the client's feelings, allows for a safe space for the human service worker to discuss the client's issues with them. Acknowledging the client is just as important and sometimes even more crucial as actively listening and asking questions. This can be done with phrases such as, "Thank you for trusting me with this information," or "Thank you for sharing," and "I hear you, and your feelings are absolutely valid."
Empathetic engagement often leads to having empathy and compassion. Sympathy, empathy, and compassion can all be experienced together. However, sometimes these concepts are a little confusing. One of my favorite ways of distinguishing between the three are these illustrations by Harvard medical psychologist Susan David. Sympathy is us feeling sorry for someone but still being distant from the problem. Empathy is us imagining and understanding what the pain may feel like, is placing us in their shoes. And compassion is an action, a compel to help. When we have empathetic engagement, it can invoke a desire to help and alleviate the person's experiences, making compassion the natural outcome of an empathetic connection. Empathy and boundaries. Carl Rogers, an American psychologist and one of the founders of humanistic psychology, defines empathy as the ability to understand the client's thoughts, feelings, and perspectives. Now, in human services, we empathize with our clients, which means we enter the client's world of perceiving their experiences from their points of view. However, with all of our own experiences still inside of us. Rogers raised concerns that close engagement of this nature with another person could blur the boundaries between the client and therapist. This can actually show up in forms of judgment, through discouragement, similarities, reflections, and other avenues that ultimately can have a negative impact on client success. Let's talk about being judgmental. Now, no one is without bias or judgment. However, these type of attitudes must be limited in human service work, as they enforce the exact opposite of the objectives and goals that we are trying to do. Under no circumstance should clients be judged based on education, income, or health. This displays a mistrust and a distrustful attitude, which creates adversarial dynamics between clients and the professional. It blocks the benefits of warmth, genuineness, and empathetic attitudes. Not only that, the application of rigid or unnecessary standards is also harmful to the client. It fails to consider their needs. I once remember working in an office that assisted homeless individuals. And a particular case manager was adamant that her clients come in at 8 a.m. because in her eyes, they had nowhere to go and they were just lazy. And therefore, they should be at the office at 8 a.m. This was an unnecessary standard as the office was open until 5 p.m. This also imposed barriers on many of her clients as their children had to be at school between 7:50 and 8:30. This case manager was not considering the client's needs. Her judging based on their housing situation had a negative impact in their successfulness in the program. Remember that the only justification ever for looking down on someone is to pick them up. The insistent scheduling of the homeless clients at 8 a.m. negatively impacted their success in the program. And although it may have given the worker a stable schedule in her duties and tasks for the day, it discouraged the clients. The avenues taken demonstrated inappropriate control by the worker. It left little room for the client to take control over their lives, positioning them between a hard rock and a hard place. It forced the choice between their kids to be on school on time or participation in the housing program. Although this is one example of how clients may be discouraged, competitions using force, shame, or placing unreachable and or unrealistic goals can negatively hinder outcomes as well. Imagine asking for assistance in building a bookshelf. You call the customer service to obtain help, and the other person on the phone states to you in a shameful manner, "You don't know how to do that? You don't have that tool in your house?" Or the person says, "I can give you the part, but you need to visit our warehouse in Iceland to obtain it." How would this impact your perspective of the company? Would you buy from them in the future? Would you reach out to the company again in good faith? Or would you give up on building the bookshelf or just try to build a bookshelf without the current parts and tools you have? Whatever the choice is, the tactics employed by the company has damaged the relationship that was built and are expected by the consumer. Human service is no exception to this. Employing these type of tactics damage the therapeutic relationship and impact the client's self-esteem. Discouragement is not the only way we may negatively impact our clients. This is why human service workers must be mindful of their own judgments, communication styles, preferences, and even their own needs. Working closely and empathetically with others requires us to be honest with ourselves. Occasionally, we may service a client who reminds us of ourselves, especially if we're in a subfield of human service that has impacted us personally in the past. Whether that similarity is cultural, age, interest, or experience, we must be aware of how this can affect our objectivity, or we run the risk of being an obstacle for the client. When the client experience mirrors our past personal bias may arise. It can bring unresolved trauma to the surface of the human service worker. And at times, these unresolved traumas are the very reason of why the worker sought employment in the form of healing. However, it makes it extremely difficult to separate the worker's experience from the client's experience, impacting empathy and shifting the scope of help from the client to the worker. There is also those who impose their own success on the client, believing that if they are coping with their trauma in some manner, then the client can too in a similar fashion. This assumption blocks the understanding of the client's experience from the client's perspective. Typically, those who enter careers in human services ideally want to help. Research studies have shown that helping makes us feel good, that it could be a source of happiness. And scientists have recently discovered that helping actually releases endorphins in our brains. It creates a positive feeling which has been dubbed as the helper's high. That brings a new meaning to the phrase that by helping others, we help ourselves. Caring about our work and our client's success is a natural part of case management. However, this can be problematic when we view the client's success as a reflection of our importance and competence. This can create pressure for the clients to adopt the worker's ideas of what they view as successful, focusing on the worker's need to impress rather than the client's specific needs. This can also come with unrealistic expectations for success, creating unnecessary and harmful meetings, interventions, and even a waste of resources and time for the client, worker, and any other third-party individuals. If the worker's primary focus is their image and not the client, then the worker has crossed a major boundary and the behavior can be deemed as unprofessional. Establishing, maintaining, and evaluating our boundaries are necessary parts of human service work to ensure our professionalism. When we review our boundaries and impact, we want to ensure that we're not making assumptions about our clients or putting them in a position where our boundaries are detrimental. As humans, we have an inclination or false attribution, which means we contribute ideas and assumptions of others without any basis. This can come in the form of believing that people who look like us, think like us, and act like us, while people who don't look like us are different and have very little similarities. These thoughts, whether consciously or unconsciously, can erect boundaries that are detrimental to our purpose as human service workers and make us ineffective. The field of human service work should be entirely free of stereotypes. Stereotypes hinder understanding. They block us from seeing shared values of others that don't share the same race, ethnic, or cultural background. And placing stereotypes on any person blinds you. It forces you to view the stereotype and not the person. When we cannot see our clients' individual differences, we cannot assess their needs or provide excellent service. Another boundary that can be detrimental is false power. This is the need to display authority, competence, or power over the client. False power lacks warmth, respect, and genuineness in the client relationship and creates additional barriers. Human service workers may also use false power as a sense of importance or competence, similarly to human service workers who believe that the client is a reflection of their abilities. It hinders collaboration and leads to giving orders. Human service workers who intimidate and threaten clients may believe that fear-based motivation helps achieve goals. However, over time, it becomes an additional stress source for the client, and it does not effectively help the client. It fosters resentment and increases the chance of transference. Transference is when the client's feelings and attitudes are based on the resemblance to someone in the past. Whenever I think of transference, I think about the R&B artist Usher. And yes, I said Usher. The song is entitled You Remind Me. The lyrics start off with stating, see, the thing about you that caught my eye is the same thing that makes me want to change my mind. And this is because transference can be both negative and positive. Positive transference simply means that the client likes you, while negative transference means the client dislikes you. Regardless of its nature, transference should be met with acceptance and not taken personally, as it is a natural part in developing client relationships. The type of transference can change and reverse over time. The client may view you positively and believe you are a confidant. When you uphold your personal boundaries and the duties of your job, the transference may become negative. Stay professional. Listen reflectively while accepting the client's feelings and behaviors, and that will demonstrate that you're not judging them. You hear them and you are seeking to understand. This will help create and maintain the safe environment that meets the needs of collaboration, and over time, that negative transference may turn back into a positive one. Countertransference is when the case manager projects emotions onto clients based on past experiences or people. Because these past experiences can evoke negative and or positive emotions, case managers should accept and be aware of their own personal feelings. Much like when a client is similar to us, familiarity can also obscure our judgment and objectives. A few years back, I had a colleague of mine who lost her husband due to COVID. As a recently assigned social worker that assisted with medical needs of clients, her second client was of similar stature and demeanor as her late spouse. She would often spend additional time with this client and assist him with items outside of her job scope. She viewed her actions as her being caring and attentive. If she effectively evaluated her actions, she would know that they stemmed from her own unresolved feelings regarding her husband's death. Her lack of awareness and attentiveness to her own needs interfered with services to the client, and it also led to a dual relationship that was deemed unprofessional and unethical. However, there could also be instances where familiarity brings negative emotions, such as a worker who may have been physically abused, assisting an alleged or confirmed abuser. This may result in a more demanding attitude from the worker, similar to those demonstrated in false power. Being aware of one's own emotions, the dynamic of power, and the client's problem can assist in diminishing countertransference. Earlier, I discussed three helping attitudes and various boundaries. All of those concepts can be affected by the role we play in our clients' lives. Staying objective and having adequate and essential boundaries employ us to determine the ownership of the client's problem. Clients will typically seek help when their needs are not being met. In any situation, when a need is not being met, that person will take ownership of the problem. As case managers, our first steps are to formulate a strategic decision on how and to what degree a client can resolve their issue. To do this, we must first understand the client's specific needs. This means responding to the client by listening, providing options, and being a resource without imposing solutions. The case manager will also have to evaluate the amount of involvement that is required by them. This can be established by considering internal and external factors, such as the client's strengths and limitations. And we also must evaluate and know that there may be times where we will have to be required to have a higher amount of involvement and collaboration with colleagues and other entities in situations such as those that have intellectual disabilities.
Regardless of the amount of involvement that the client or the case manager contributes to the resolution of a client's problem, case managers should always maintain a supportive role. Responses to clients who share their experiences or their issues should be encouraging and provide guidance. Unhelpful responses, such as, "This is your problem, not my problem," are just what they are, unhelpful. They affect relationships. They seem unempathetic and they hinder support of the client, which is ultimately our goal. When case managers have negative attitudes or make negative statements in this manner, it has a negative impact on the client, the community, and the agency or department that the case manager works for. A great example of this was in this week's readings. A domestic violence shelter staff would take new clientele, but they wouldn't take any action or initiative in assisting the clients. Clients coming into the shelter only had 30 days to develop a plan or return to their previous circumstances. Yet, the staff did not assist. They neglected their supportive role and neglected planning with the clients their next steps. Both the county and state made several visits to the shelter to inquire about the lack of planning in which the staff blamed the clients. They stated that their inaction was based on the fact that the clients were given a list of resources and they did nothing with them. The shelter was deemed ineffective, and subsequently, they closed and a new shelter was built in its place, one that offered planning, support, suggestions, and transportation. This improved greater success and empowerment in the individuals in that shelter. Guilt, or the feeling that you may have caused harm or done something wrong as a case manager, is very common. It stems from the feelings that we have not done everything possible for our clients. To curb that feeling, we must remember who owns the problem. Overly extending ourselves can negatively impact our clients as well as our health. Remember, you are support for the client. Allowing the client to participate in solving their own problem shows respect for their privacy and self determination. It allows them to gain skills in self efficiency. There are clients, however, who will never be satisfied with the amount of involvement needed or demonstrated in your interactions. They may accuse you of not caring, not doing your job. I myself have had a client state to me that they didn't need the Tough Love Act. Before getting upset, evaluate the situation. The client's frustration stems from being in need of something. The strategic decision that was made regarding your involvement needs to be reviewed. Has the situation changed? If not, an effective course of action may be to explain to the client the importance of their independence. As when clients are capable of solving their own issues, it promotes their emotional health and maturity. When clients make these efforts, positive feedbacks and recognitions should be provided for their accomplishments, no matter how small or big we may believe they are. Reality check. The reality of human service work is that the nature of our work is just who we are, humans. And being human, we will need to deal with our own attitudes as well as others. Some human service workers express a desire to help, but struggle when a client has difficult behavior, which can lead to complaints. This is an opportunity to be aware of our own past traumas, capabilities, or skill sets. Effective human service involves dealing with dissatisfied customers, dealing with challenging clients. There's no way around it. I remember my aunt's nursing career, and she often called it a thankless job. Growing up, I always stated, like, well, maybe that's just not her calling. And while this may be true for some, it was far from true for my aunt. She loved her job, despite her negative description of it. She was very clear that she didn't go into the field expecting gratitude or agreement, and any person coming into the field for that reason had unrealistic expectations, and disappointment would soon follow. Workers who expect clients to be grateful and cooperative or feel upset when they're not hinder effective services. No matter how thankless or uncooperative a client may become, the fact is that the case manager must remember the client is human, and the role that the case manager will play is twofold, regardless of the client's attitude or gratitude. Human service workers ultimately play two very important roles in the lives of their clients. Human service workers are a resource for the client. They possess valuable information regarding resources, policies, and laws that are relevant to the client's issues. When a case manager brings their information and combines it with understanding of a client's personal circumstances, that case manager officially becomes a collaborator. The skills that case managers are equipped with can help promote clients to actively participate in their problems, which include voicing their own preferences or suggestions. When the case manager acknowledges a client's capabilities and builds off of their strengths, clients begin to resolve their own issues. And they become self sufficient in areas that they once struggled in. Case managers must remember that the start of collaboration starts off with their attitudes towards the client. The information they gain from use of the basic helping attitudes help them tailor a strategic decision and the involvement that they will have in the client's journey. They will need to consistently evaluate their own boundaries, biases, and judgments to mitigate unprofessionalism, unethical events, and negative impacts on the clients. Staying supportive of the clients even when they aren't supportive of us due to whether it be transference or frustration is a must. Remember, although the client owns the problem, we are the ones equipped to assist.